Hey friends, Lee from straightwoo.com here with the new moon solar eclipse in Cancer reading. Great to be with you. Hope everybody's doing good and dealing well with the Mars retrograde, which has been live for a couple weeks now. And in a couple weeks' time, I think it's July 26th, we'll have a Mercury retrograde at the same time, because in the words of Austin Coppock, great astrologer, some of you should be following. If you're not, nothing beats angry like angry and confused. But for the moment, we're just in the Mars retrograde, so we are probably only angry at this point. or let's hope that's one of the things that's going on. And here we are. Look guys, we're in a string of pretty tough lunations. New and full moons. Lunations are another word for that. Full moon in Capricorn a couple weeks ago was pretty tough. I did a video of that. If you haven't watched it, you can go back and see it on my YouTube channel. Full moon in Capricorn, which is always kind of heavy, kind of austere, with the moon right on top, Saturn right on top of the moon. Pretty heavy, not fun, a bit baleful and full of woe. And here we are in the new moon, stroke solar eclipse in Cancer. I say stroke solar eclipse, we'll talk about that in a second. Some people rate this lunation as a full-on proper eclipse, some people don't. There's various reasons for that. And then the next lunation after this one will be the full moon total lunar eclipse, so definitely an eclipse, in Leo, which is going to feature some really rough, touchy bits with Mars, who is, again, currently in retrograde. So, first thing up here is new moon in Cancer stroke solar eclipse. Why stroke and why not just straight up solar eclipse? Eclipses come in what we call magnitude. And the way eclipses occur is that the nodes, they're points, mathematically calculated points, about two bisecting planes out in the solar system. Or not that far actually, because it's involving the moon. But when these 2 points intersect, these are the eclipsing points, the north and the south node of the moon. And in order to have an eclipse of any kind, the nodes have to be, it's an axis, there's north node directly across from south node. The axis of the north and south node needs to be within 17 degrees of that new or full moon. This one we're in now is about, 20 to 5, so 15-ish, something like that, so 15. So if the window is 17, it's like 15. It's not that extreme. The closer the node is to the newer full moon, that's when you get total solar eclipses, total lunar eclipses, blood moons, and that kind of stuff. This is not that kind of lunation. In fact, I've pulled it up on a little app here, which you can download for yourself, which is handily called Eclipses. And this is kind of what it would look like. Essentially, the magnitude is 0.33, so it's about 0.33 chunk of the sun kind of clipped out. It's not a total solar eclipse. It's not a huge one. It's not in that same way visually impactful in the same manner. Equally, for almost everyone watching, you are not going to see it because you probably don't live in Tasmania or Antarctica. So there's limited visuals in that sense as well. But what is important is this is the first of a kind. This is the first eclipse across Cancer and Capricorn that we are going to have. We've been in eclipse systems, or a series of eclipses across Leo and Aquarius, which we have yet to finish. They'll be finished in kind of early 2019. We've had eclipses across those two signs. And this is the first inkling of what Cancer and Capricorn eclipses are going to look like. It's the first in a series. There is a sense of, from my point of view, I do count it as an eclipse because even though the magnitude is not great and the visual impact is not great, it's certainly not the same as a total full-on solar eclipse where the entire sun disappears. It's still something. There's still an impact there. And I think it is a bit of a coming soon to a theater near you vibe. I've mentioned this before in a Uranus in Taurus video a couple months back, I want to say, where it's like, it's very often that signs or planets will move into a sign, get just right over the boundary, enter that sign, and then retrograde back and leave. And that has a similar thing too. You get treated to this kind of introduction, or again, coming soon to a theater near you, a preview of what's to come, just a bit of a taster, and then we go back to kind of normal vibes. So in this sense, I think this is the first of a series in Cancer Capricorn eclipses. It actually brings us into a summertime eclipse season because the next two lunations will be eclipses. And I think it gives us just a small vibe on what's going to be happening with Cancer and Capricorn eclipses in the future. So I would still pay attention to this, and I would still think of it as, if not a full solar eclipse, like a pseudo eclipse at least. And my feet are definitely up on my desk because that's where we're at right now. That's how things are going for me. So interpretively, if I'm looking at this chart and I'm trying to do an interpretation, I'm thinking about themes here. This is a heavy chart. There's two sides to this chart, and I think I'm going to start with the bad and end with the good. Mostly because I think that's also how it's going to feel. The heavy stuff is quite overt and upfront, but there is this backdrop of really nice stuff that I want you to be able to sense and feel when it presents itself. So I want to describe both. What makes this moon heavy is that all new moons, of course, are the sun and the moon in a perfect conjunction in a particular sign in a particular degree. This one is in Cancer at 20 degrees 41, if you need to know. But they are both exactly across from 2 points that are kind of itchy. Pluto and Black Moon Lilith. Most potently, there's a near exact opposition between Sun, Moon on one side and Pluto on the other. Pluto, what is planet Pluto about? Pluto is the underworld, god of the underworld. He's manipulation, power, control, coercion, fixation. I'd say wherever we have Pluto in our chart is a place that we usually tend to fixate, and we get taken to the underworld. It's very hard for us to maintain clear-headed, easygoing equilibrium in that space of the chart. For many of us, we will meet our maker in that part of the chart. We may, the outer planets work very different than personal planets. Uranus breaks things. It's quite jagged and erratic. Neptune is like a fog or a mist. It's like what's ideal. Pluto is like a black mirror. And there's a great quote that I'm going to try to paraphrase, and I'm going to muck it up. But a writer wrote something to the effect of, death is the black mirror from which anything else derives its meaning. That we need this kind of like kernel of dark, this knowingness about, even if we can't meet it full on and face to face, like just the awareness that there are many layers deeper into ourselves and to other people, and that there are things below the surface which we may not be able to access in waking consciousness, but which do exist. That those things somehow actually in a way liven the field. Pluto is a dark mirror, quite intense, quite apt for, again, power. Power is one of the key things. There's an absolute immovability about Pluto. Nothing, it's kind of like do not pass go, do not collect $200, that kind of thing. The buck really stops with Pluto as Lord of the Underworld. Very intense planet. And when I see Sun and Moon, spirit and body, soul and body, ego and emotions, the ego container and the emotional body vessel, when I see that whole chunk of self and selfhood directly across from Pluto, it's heavy. What is that song? Like, he ain't heavy, he's my brother. No, like this is like, no, he's just heavy, he's Pluto. Sun across from Pluto, I think about power issues, power struggles. I think about really passive, aggressive stuff between people. I think about gaslighting. I think about You know, Sun across from Pluto in the natal chart is going to meet power, is going to have to confront issues of authority and face that stuff and be taken down by it, but also to kind of like, boom, come back out of it. Sun Pluto people are very, very powerful. In fact, somebody I'm a real fan of, Colin Kaepernick, he is a Sun Pluto conjunction. You can say what you want about him politically, about the protests. I probably won't agree with you, but whatever your opinion is, dude has fucking balls. It takes balls and presence to do what he does. And to do it and go out on the field and fucking kneel and hold his own. I mean, that's Pluto. It has presence, it has weight. There is a sensibility and it like a simmering something around Sun Pluto people or Plutonian people. You've got Pluto on the ascendant, Pluto on the midheaven, Pluto near your sun or moon. There's a simmering something with Pluto that most people know instinctively. It's like wild animals. You'll instinctively be like, I'm just gonna stay a little bit away, just for my safety. There's that sense. There's something both again smoldering and simmering about these people. And when I see, and that's in the natal chart, but you see these things happening in transit, I think about domineering attitudes. I think about that kind of struggle. I think about power plays. Um, Moon to Pluto is like lancing the emotional boil. There could be a big eruption of emotion at this new moon, kind of like or like a spilling over. If the cup has gotten too full, you've been trying to maintain and like keep things under wraps. It's like, whew, that is, and one of the ways Pluto does work is, I'd say, in quite a uh, purgative, poison as cure context. Sometimes that is the way Pluto comes for things, is to again, there's this sense of like the boil and you have to lance it, and it's quite fetid and putrid and it's not pleasant, but it's deeply healing. Um, so it's not a bad time to show emotion if you've got it. If you got it, flaunt it, girl. If you've got that stuff, you need to get rid of it, offload it, release it. I do think about release at this new moon. I think about a new cycle because that's what new moons and solar eclipses are about. A new opening and a new cycle that has to do with, I think, facing pretty deep-seated power stuff. Wherever you've got Cancer and Capricorn in your chart, it could be in interpersonal relationships across the first and seventh. It could be financial stuff across the second and eighth, 10th and fourth. It could be external life, home life, my career, my home, power struggles between home and family and work and career. It's going to play out in different parts of people's charts, but I think there's a really profound sense of needing to meet this material somewhat head on, because in fact, Pluto is passive aggressive, not aggressive. Aggression is really Mars's space. And in fact, it's really interesting to have this lunation in a time when Mars, our aggression and our fight and our conflict and the part of us that would normally say, hey, fuck you, don't do that to me, and like stand up for ourselves, is retrograde. He's kind of like walking backwards. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He's not really comfortable. And then there's this new moon solar eclipse in Cancer, bang across from Pluto, possibly flushing up, palpating to the surface power dynamics, passive aggressive dynamics, microaggressions could be rife, gaslighting big time. Like, I think there's going to be some necessity to call on something different, because it would have been easy if Mars was direct right now, again, to go to the direct path. And um, I know I'm like going off on like a million tangents here, guys, but one way to deal with Pluto is to out him, because Pluto likes passive aggression and subterranean, like subterfuge, and to make you feel really wrong and uncomfortable without ever, clearly stating why. And one of the ways to deal with Pluto sometimes and Plutonian dynamics is to kind of flush it up to the surface, because then it gets kind of bewildered in the light of day when you kind of try to meet them head on and hold your own. But again, interesting. We don't have that same thing to call on, I don't feel, because Mars is retrograde. Um, our normal sense of being able to meet things head on, to be a bit dynamic, to, get into conflicting um, situations and to find a way out of it or fight your way out of something is probably not finely tuned right now. And in fact, I'd tell you during a Mars retrograde is not the great time to get try to go down that path because Mars retrograde tends to either depress that function entirely or distort it. And so instead of, I'm using the word aggression, but aggression is much um, maligned in our culture, right? Anger has no real place in today's world. But aggression and anger are, in fact, very, very useful. And when I say aggression, I don't mean, moments of absolute white, hot, blinding rage that are out of control, but the ability to aggressively come back to somebody and push back when a boundary is transgressed is important. Mars is important. A poorly expressed Mars is not even like, it's not, what's the expression about dogs? Like, all bark, no bite. But a poorly expressed Mars is like all growl, no bark. There's not even the bark. And that could be one of the issues here. If we don't have the right Martian tools to call upon, we may need to find a different seat and source of power, a different way of playing, a different way of being. Um, and also, I think another thing to say is that Pluto has a steep undertow. So wherever you're having this new moon, and Pluto right across from it, these two opposing areas of this chart, these two axis points, there's a steep undertow. There's a sense that you could get, boom, sucked into something. Again, if it was first and seventh, I'd say that would make you Cancer rising. I'd say you might get sucked into a relationship dynamic, like a really powerful relationship that wham has a strong underpull or like undertow, that kind of like magnetism to it. Because that's another thing that Pluto has. Pluto has a magnetic sexual charge to it. Um, and also Sun and Moon to Pluto can talk about loss, about grief. Emotionally, I think about jealousy. I think about possessiveness. I think about control. I think about intensity, like really like pulsating intensity when we meet people. Here's the good news. There are some good things in this chart, I swear. I mean, it's intense. I don't know if I would say that I think this Sun Moon thing opposite Pluto is tough, but it's intense. So, depending on your personality and what you're like in your chart, you may find it traumatic. Other people that are like really Plutonian, or you got a lot of Scorpio in your chart or something like that, or even Capricorn, you're going to be like, I got this. Some people may enjoy, in fact, this kind of like intense play of emotion and meetings and stuff. Good stuff. Jupiter has gone direct. Jupiter's been retrograde for some time. Jupiter went direct a couple days ago. He's been in Scorpio since what? Ooh, dates. In Scorpio since October 10th, 2017, and went retrograde March 9th, just went direct July 10th, a couple days ago. So this is helpful. Having Jupiter on side is helpful. Now, Jupiter direct is good. So wherever Scorpio is in your chart, you're going to have more ability and possibility right now to build things and to increase and grow. Jupiter retrograde, when he goes retrograde, he usually intensifies the search for growth or the seek for growth or whatever's been expanding outward in the part of your chart ruled by Scorpio. It's like we wrap the intensity in and we burrow down and we kind of go back and see, review whether or not that expansion is the right one or the correct one or how we're in relationship to that. So Jupiter going direct again is a boon. It's good. It's helpful. It's in coming up to another trine with Jupiter, with Neptune, excuse me. So I think great visions, great creativity, great idealism is on the way, but it's kind of like cooking in the background. Mercury is already definitely in shadow. Let's see here. Let me get the dates. Yeah, Mercury in this chart is in shadow. Um, and what that means is that he's kind of like in the shadow of like the retrograde that he'll eventually go into. So the mercurial faculties, the mind, thoughts, communication, errands, shipments, travel, whatever is already maybe getting a bit touchy, Mercury will go retrograde on July 26th. And like other retrogrades, I've written about that for astrology.com, so I'll post that when it's ready. Now, here's the cool thing. And I'll try to wrap this up pretty quick because I know I've been talking forever, and I always get comments that the videos are so long. Sorry, friends, never used one word if I can use three. But here's something really, really cool. It's in the background of this chart. I'm going to show you actually. Do you see that triangle? That is a grand trine. And the grand trine is, oops, moving off things. The grand trine is moving from a couple different points here. Virgo, Venus in Virgo, Sarah's in Virgo, Capricorn, Saturn over here, and then right here at the top, Uranus and Juno in Taurus. What does it mean? So Grand Trine is an ultimately hugely harmonious, flowing collection of energies between three parts of the chart. Three parts of the chart being affected are Virgo, Capricorn, and Taurus. So you want to look at your chart and understand what parts of the chart are being affected positively by this. And Grand Trines are just like a boon, a good time, feel goods, good vibes, a good exchange of energy is happening. And if I had to put my money on like what is going on here, this looks super good for romance. If you're out dating, I've also written about this for astrology.com. It should go up this weekend. This is like the most killer weekend going for romance. There's a string of collection of little things like almost in a row for 4 or 5 days until the 17th or 18th that are really, really good. So in corner one, we've got Venus in Virgo and Sarah's in Virgo. Venus and Sarah's, when they get together, are great for beauty, fashion, shopping, textiles, style, design. Because part of Sarah's is great mother, kind of like the mothering, the nurturing, but part of Sarah's world is textiles and fabrics. And so Venus, Sarah's people are fabulously dressed, great eye for product, really great eye for design. But there's also something very, Venus, Sarah's has a talent for cultivating a warm, sensual, inviting space. There's affection here. There's something gentle. There's something kind and sweet. There's a sensualness to this combination. Disclaimer is that Venus in Virgo is not too happy in that sign, and Venus in Virgo likes to work more than it likes to play, but it is quite discerning. My sense is that overall between these three corners, I think there's really a possibility for something romantic to pop up for people that have planets and points in early degrees of Virgo, Taurus, Capricorn, and the earth signs. So Venus, Sarah's, we've talked about that first corner. Then we've got Saturn, early degrees of Capricorn. And these two guys, you know, Venus to Saturn trine is like long-term stable commitments, love, financial arrangements, money deals, anything that deals with luxury, like it's a good time to buy investment pieces, that kind of thing. Ceres to Saturn is very nurturing, but in again, a stable, solid way. It's kind of a good mix between fatherly and motherly aspects or parts of the psyche. Then we move to the other corner, which is Uranus and Juno in Taurus. Juno is goddess of marriage. Uranus is things that are out of the blue. So you put those guys together, and it can be a great moment for out of the blue meetings. So Juno, goddess of marriage, trining to Venus, good. Ceres trining to Juno, good. Uranus trining to Venus, good. Venus trining to Uranus, great. I mean, this whole collection going back and forth is just, again, I could give so many more words to it, but it looks like good vibes in love, good vibes in romance. It's a good weekend to go out on dates, to have fun. You know, if you're on the apps, to be swiping around, texting around, doing that kind of stuff. I think one caveat here is that there could be a tipping point moment either in relationships or in how we relate, because Juno, goddess of marriage, which is goddess of marriage, but it's also relationships, intimacy, partnerships that can be business too, and also just how we relate, how we connect to people, our ideas about intimacy. She is perfectly squaring the nodes, and when things square the nodes, there's like a tipping point between what was and what will be, what's comfortable, what provides growth, the past and the future, where we need to head, where we need to leave. There's this relationship point at the crux, right at the crux of these two different paths, let's say. I've once again talked way too much, but that's it. This is the new moon solar eclipse in Cancer. I hope you guys can reap all the benefits of this wonderful grand Earth trine that's hanging out in the background. And then as well, use the best of the Moon, Sun, Pluto aspects too, to your greatest growth. I mean, this is a fabulous time again to release stuff, to see patterns of relationship domination or power, or to look at that stuff in yourself, you know. And I'm actually gonna talk for a few minutes more. One thing that's often said, so often bandied about in New Age circles, is as above, so below. We've lost somebody really special this week, at least from my estimation. Marion Woodman, well-known Jungian psychoanalyst, author, writer of fine books, you know, fabulous person. She wrote very, very cogently about the divine feminine, about the necessity of women to reconnect with their divine feminine, indeed for everyone. She wrote about the dark goddess, a fabulous woman. So she said, you know, as above, so below is not just an easy New Age maxim, but that it also represents as in the head, so in the belly. You know, that the mind and the body are connected, that spirit and matter are connected, that body and soul are connected, that these things are not, her quote is something that these two things are simultaneously present, not dialogically opposed. You know, she's a very, very bright woman. So I think it could be a great time to also delve into that kind of material. As above, so below. As in the head, so in the belly. What is, you know, this is what I think and this is what I feel. How do those things match up? Or this is what I'm saying, but this is how I'm acting. This is what they're saying, but this is how it's feeling when it lands with me. Those are the kinds of things that I think need to be, get your periscope up and be on the lookout. Lots of love to you guys as always. Feel free to ask comments, questions down below as and when, and I will see you guys very, very soon. Lots of love. Bye.